Hey, Amy.
Yeah, Juan.
Give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? She is Amy Cuevas, and I am Juan Ramirez, and you are listening, watching Baseball Shangri-La. Let's get the business out of the way. If you are listening to us on the podcast, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Rate us, write us a review, help spread the word about the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Hit that notification button, give us the thumbs up, leave us comments. We love engaging with you guys. Make sure you're following us on social media, on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, Threads, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. Let's get this show started. And a pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. Amy, ¿cómo estás?
I know. Long time no see. Hi. How are you? What's going
That's
on?
Right. That's right. Okay, Amy. So the Doyers and the show pods are starting tonight. But before you guys watch the game, hopefully you're watching or listening to the show. There was a lot of news that broke this week. And so our last episode, we wanted to focus on baseball because, hey, we're here for baseball. It's called Baseball Shangri-La.
What? Is it? No.
Yeah. So we want to address those stories. We don't want to go ahead and avoid them. So I think we've talked about this before with the story on the EPA investigation. And we got a big update on the EPA investigation. So let's go to the update desk and let's talk about the eBay investigation. Amy, what do we have with Ipe Masuhara?
I mean, where do you want to start? So Thursday afternoon, there was basically 37 pages that dropped of what was going on and the investigation, the federal investigation against Ipe Mizuhara. So I don't even know where we start because there was so much information. They were talking about phone records and, Shohei cooperated with the investigation, was available for questioning. They talked about bank accounts, just like kind of the overall picture of everything. They even went into detail as far as like the bets and the amount. So we've got tons of numbers. I don't know, 37 pages of this stuff. Where do you want to start, Juan?
Did you really look at all 37 pages? Because I know I saw a bunch of people like putting up screenshots of those pages, but I didn't know it was 37 pages.
I skimmed it, but I got a lot of this. I got a lot of the screenshots from Twitter, but I have the report. If you want me to email or text it over to you, happy to send it over.
It's okay. Like for me, Amy, what this is about is when we first talked about that story, we really wanted to stay away from speculation. So when we spent that time on that episode, it was really like, these were the questions that we had, and we were hoping that the investigation would answer those questions. So that's what I want to focus on, is those questions that we have, were they answered? And from what I've seen so far, because the feds had a press conference today and they revealed a lot of information in that press conference. And for the most part, I feel all my questions were kind of answered from what the feds said today in that press conference.
I feel so at work. Sometimes we start from we turn the pyramid upside down and we start with the end result first, and then we go into the details. And I feel like maybe we start with the MLB made a statement after all of this information dropped. Let's start there, and then we can kind of break down some of the stuff that we saw or the screenshots. So the MLB did make a statement. They said, "We are aware of the charges filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office against Mr. Mizuhara for bank fraud after a thorough federal investigation. According to that investigation, Shohei Ohtani is considered a victim of fraud, and there is no evidence that he authorized betting with an illegal bookmaker. Further, the investigation did not find any betting on baseball by Mr. Mizuhara. Given the information disclosed today and other information we have already collected, we will wait until resolution of the criminal proceeding to determine whether further investigation is warranted." So that was the statement released by the MLB today in response to all of the information that was brought out to light by the federal investigation.
And to me, I think what is the most relevant part of this, right? And that is the question we had was, if he bet on baseball, that was going to be a big problem because the CBA specifically states you cannot bet on baseball. So I think that's huge that we discovered that not only Shohei wasn't the one making the bets, but also that Ipe did not bet on baseball. So that was one of our questions that got answered. Next, Amy.
So some of the stuff that just a lot of it came out, even just about the interpreting. So some of the comments that we had made as we were, kind of releasing some of the information, but essentially, backing up what Otani said, he believed that, his agent, his accountant, the financial advisor, they were monitoring all of the accounts. So he didn't really ask about individual accounts. The investigation said he just had Ipe inquire with the financial overall picture from the professionals. So his whole investment profile versus like, hey, what about this account? What about this account? And other information came out that his agent Nez usually relayed messages through Ipe. So he didn't always have contact with Shohei. So Ipe was that central communication hub between everybody. And so even questions came up in that investigation that mentioned, his agent Nez had asked a couple of times about the account in question, and Ipe said, oh, that account was private. And Nez never confirmed that directly with Shohei. It always went through Ipe, who controlled that narrative. So,
again, I felt a lot of questions were answered today, but there was a lot of stuff that came out that was just wild. That was just kind of like, what?
The car loan situation.
The car loans, but you had mentioned the Nez, his agent, Shohei's agent, and I feel like that's kind of getting swept under the rug. Where did you interpret it this way, Amy, or is it just me? It almost seemed like Nez didn't want to address this with Shohei, and I'm just like, hey, dude, isn't this part of your job as an agent, or am I just being too hard on Nez? It just seems like, hey, bro, are you being negligent right now in your job?
I mean, I don't know. I think we all have the power of hindsight, right? And all of these details coming out. If your client trusts his financial people around him, trusts this assistant that he hired, because that was also what came out. We already knew, but Ipe was separately employed as a de facto manager and assistant to Shohei outside of the Dodgers employing him as an interpreter. So he would drive, do daily tasks, manage certain business and personal matters outside of the MLB. So if you guys don't have a reason to distrust somebody, most people, I won't say most, some people go through life and it's like, all right, well, I asked the question, I got the answer. I'm assuming it came from Shohei. Why would I assume anything different? And then I go on with my day. So I don't know. I'm not here to question like if his agent was negligent or not, but just, I mean, if you're not suspecting anything, unless you go through life a little, I tend to be trusting. So that's on me. But maybe if you're a little bit more skeptical or cynical, maybe you do dig a little harder, push a little harder. I don't know.
I think with everything that came out in that press conference, I think that's probably the biggest criticism of Shohei himself, was that he was too trusting. And that,
oh gosh, what a horrible trait. Like, he trusted the people around him.
Yeah, and that he just did not.
Sorry, that was sarcasm if that didn't carry well, just so people don't think I'm knocking him. I think something that did come out that was interesting across the internet was they did break down like what he did. So through the Excel spreadsheet that they had access to, from December 2021 to January 2024, there were approximately 19,000 wagers, which equated to about 25 bets a day, ranging anywhere from $10 to $160,000 per bet. The average was about 12,800. I'm not even going to go into the full numbers, but essentially he won around 142 million. He lost about 182 million. So that negative balance was $40 million. Now, what I have seen across the internet is like, oh, how did somebody not see those numbers moving? And I guess my counter to that is just, I'm sure it wasn't the full amounts all at once. Like if he's betting anywhere from $10 to 160, it's not like he was taking those amounts. He was winning some days. So it's not like he was just pilfering straight from Otani's accounts. He was probably using his balances going back and forth. And then when it dipped too low, he's going to have to make some payments. But that, I don't know much about the betting world, but that's what seemed, I don't know, common sense to me, but maybe I don't know as much about that. I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, I think one of the questions that we had when we first talked about this was, how is it that this was all done? How did this happen without Shohei knowing? And I think the feds did a really good job of explaining that this was fraud, in the sense that eBay was changing settings on bank accounts, so Shohei wasn't getting the notification. Like when the bank was calling to confirm transactions, eBay was basically acting like he was Shohei.
Well, and
You know,
he initiated some of them too, which was gutsy. I was just like, wow, like you're going to initiate it. He got the account frozen because he couldn't answer some of the questions that the investigation said. And then he called back in, impersonated Shohei again. But because he had the biographical information that they needed, he got the account unfrozen. So just like the levels that it just boggles the mind. Like,
well, and again, to me, that's the important part of what was released today was the answer to those questions, which is primarily the important thing was did Shohei make the bets and did he bet on baseball? We have answers that didn't happen. And then how did this happen without Shohei not knowing? And for the most part, we can see it was eBay was committing the fraud. Now, some of the other things that came out in terms of those text messages, I think is kind of scary because it almost seems like Shohei's life was getting to the point where it might be a little dangerous for him. I don't know if you saw the exchange where the bookie was going to approach Shohei in Newport while he was walking the dog.
no, I didn't see that one. Oh
They
gosh.
had so they had that in the text in the
I
report
missed
on
that
there.
page in the report.
So again, it seems like because another question that was always being asked was why would a bookie allow the debt to become so big, right? And so there was some text exchanges that were released by the feds between the bookie and eBay, and one of them had said from the bookie, it was just like, "It's okay, man. We know you're good for it. You know we're recovering that you're covering." And I think it was at that point that eBay realized and I think again, this helps Shohei's argument is that Ipe realized Shohei doesn't know anything about this. I'm about to get caught right here, right? So it seems that after that tax exchange, either money they weren't getting their money. A bookie was going to approach Shohei while he was walking his dog in Newport to address this matter about the money. And so that's why I'm saying, like, there are a lot of things, and we got to streamline it to what is important to know. But there's just all this other stuff that came out that's just so wild, like that story. And then just the fact that it's $16 million, not
Yeah,
four
it's
and a half million.
more than the
Yeah.
original amount. And I guess what I took from this is like obviously he's not the first celebrity that has been duped. Like some people are acting like he is. Like even just the statements about like, well, he was too trusting. Like, but yeah, a grain of salt there. Like I'm sure he's learned a lesson, but also not the first person this has happened to. But also I'm just kind of bummed for him because this overshadowed not only the Dodgers opening of the season, but it overshadowed him being a Dodger and coming to this team and the culmination of all the hard work in the offseason and just all the work that's led up to this. And it's such a bummer that this all had to happen. I'm glad he's been cleared, but like, just what a stain on the opening of the season and not just being able to fully enjoy it and have that in the back of everybody's mind.
Yes, and I think the Dodgers organization is probably relieved from this. I think Major League Baseball is probably very relieved because I think the feds did a really good job of coming out there today and making it very clear that Shohei was the victim here. And yes, you're still going to deal with a lot of people who are going to still say there's no way Shohei knew about this and that Ipe was the fall guy. I look, hey, you're right, buddy. You have a good day. There's
Well,
nothing I
but
can.
you've got the federal government, you've got you've got the IRS, you've got a lot of people who I don't know how you could pay all of those people off, but you know, who knows?
Yeah, and
I
it's
just
like,
I'm
look,
like it's not like this was just an internal MLB investigation into it. Like these
exactly.
were independent parties that probably want to get to the bottom of this, even if it's just for tax purposes.
And that's why I say, in the words of Keanu Reeves, all right, you're right, buddy. You have a good day. I mean, look, if that's what you guys want to believe, there's nothing I can do for you. For us on this show, when we first started covering this story, what was important to us, okay, these are the questions from the information we had. And what did we say? Let's let the investigation complete itself, and hopefully it'll answer those questions. And the pertinent questions were answered. He is supposed to surrender himself to authorities by the time you guys are watching this episode or listening to this episode on Friday. He is facing up to Ipe is facing almost up to 30 years in prison if he is convicted. And again, these are felonies. Amy, I have to say, with this whole eBay thing and then what happened with Trevor Bauer and what we're about to talk about now, I do feel like I have all this legal experience now, or either that I can play one on TV.
Okay. Let's not go that far, pal.
uh, Other news, we got another update for you, so let's just keep it going here at the update desk. Let's go to Amy Cuevas reporting live from the update desk. Amy, what else do you have for us?
So we do have some breaking news. It was actually reported on Tuesday. I can't hold that. So TMZ was the first one to report that Urias was going to be charged with 5 misdemeanors from that September 3rd incident last year outside of BMO Stadium. So 1 count of spousal battery, 2 counts of domestic battery involving a dating relationship, 1 count for false imprisonment, and 1 assault allegation alleged to the altercation outside of BMO Stadium. So 5 counts altogether.
Yeah, and let's give credit to TMZ Sports, by the way, because TMZ Sports was one of the first ones that was reporting the eBay story, and then they've been on this Julio thing. And I know that TMZ has this reputation, but I will say this. What big story have they gotten wrong? What story have they reported on where it turns out that TMZ was wrong? So I get you may not like all the other stuff that they do, but for the most part, when it's been a big news story, they have not missed the mark.
Yep.
We're talking. So we're
Like, all right.
So we're talking about Julio Diaz, for those of you. So this has been going on since the end of last year. Now, mind you, this is just the criminal aspect of this. He is to be arraigned on May 2nd. Now, one of the interesting things that came out of this story for me is that Major League Baseball still has not interviewed Julio Diaz. Okay. And the reason why Major League Baseball has not interviewed Julio Diaz, and I think it's a pretty legitimate reason, and they don't want Julio saying something that could be used against him in court. So here is the important thing. Major League Baseball allows the criminal aspect of this to play itself out. Once his arraignment comes and they find out from lawyers that commented on this the situation, retired lawyers.
Oh, your fellows.
Yeah, my fellow counselors. Hey, counselor. He is facing maybe up to a year. Again, now these are misdemeanors; they are not felonies. But he is facing up to a year in county jail for these charges. My fellow counselors are telling me that more than likely he's not going to face jail time; that he's looking at a fine. The other thing that was interesting to me, Amy, about this story is because the first incident that happened with him, because charges were not pressed, this technically is going to be a first-time offense for Julio Diaz when he gets arraigned, so they're going to treat it like that. However, it's not going to be a first offense when Major League Baseball goes ahead and finishes their investigation. So Julio is still not signed. He is still a free agent. I know there were talks of him maybe playing in Japan. And with all the pitching injuries that are going around in Major League Baseball, I don't know if anybody's going to seriously consider signing him, but you would think with the punishment that Trevor Bauer received from Major League Baseball, that Julio being a second-time offender of the domestic violence policy in Major League Baseball,
the only second-time offender up to this point.
Yeah, that he's going to he's looking at a hefty suspension. So I this is what it just really sucks, right? Because we're divided. The first two stories we're talking about on this show, we're talking about criminal stuff. We're talking about the courts, and it just sucks as a Dodger fan. Bauer, Julio, and now the Ipe situation, and you said it earlier, Amy. It's detracting from the focus, which should be on the field.
Well, that and it's just, I mean, I know this stuff is newsworthy and we need to mention it, but like it's unfortunate and I know people don't want to hear it, but this is also the human factor of life creeping in. This happens in life every day. We're seeing it creep into our baseball sanctuary. And it's not like this is anything new. Any of this stuff happening happens every day to other people. It maybe not as large of a scale with as big of a focus, but it does happen every day. So
Yeah, and the reality of I know a lot of people look at baseball, and you've even said this, Amy. You look at it as an escape. You don't, you want to have fun. You don't want to be reminded of the reality of what's going on in life. I think the Dodgers have.
I don't mind the reality, to be fair. It's more than just the negativity and going after players just because they don't perform like perfect trying to think of the word like gladiators in the field and they're not perfect all the time. I think that's an unrealistic expectation to have. So when I talk about my sanctuary, it's just let's get the negativity out of the game and appreciate what these guys are doing on the field. Like stuff's going to happen. They're human. Things are going to happen on the field, off the field. We're going to cover them. People are going to talk about them, but we can also choose how we respond to the game itself. And I think that's something that baseball has been trending in a different direction. Or maybe we just see more of it because of social media, that there's just a lot of negativity out there. So I would like to see more appreciation for the sport.
Yeah, and the Dodgers have made a very concerted effort to erase any semblance of Julio Urias from that, not only from Dodger Stadium, but from their history as an organization. So
Which
we
is
wanted
unfortunate because he was the pitcher in that final inning of the
exactly
World Series. So
he pitched the final 3 innings of Game 6 of them winning their most recent World Series. So it is a reminder again of just in at this situation he did it to himself. It's different with the Shohei situation, right? Because Shohei is a victim, and yeah, I know that there's going to be, especially all the people who don't like the Dodgers, will continue to make jokes about Shohei. And yeah, I do feel that Shohei's reputation has probably taken a little bit of a hit, whether it's fair or not, because I think a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, you don't have your house in order, man. It's like, come on, dude.
I agree, but I also like this is something that I see happens in societies too often where we're turning this on the victim. And it's like, no, or Ipe could have just not done this. Or,
Yeah.
oh, this is Julio's second offense, but the person didn't report the first one. That's on them. Or Julio could have just not acted like this. The
Yeah.
people who are perpetrating these crimes, I feel like we give them kind of an out, even if we're just doing it unconsciously, by putting a lot of that burden on the victim. And that's not right. Oh, they have to live with this, but it's like, well, maybe if they hadn't done this in the first place, none of us would have to be dealing with it. So maybe put the focus back there. Not you, just in general. I feel like that's what happens to people. Like everybody's putting this burden completely on Shohei, and it's like, no, maybe Ipe could have just not done this. Maybe Julio could have just not, assaulted somebody.
No, those are very excellent points. So let's end the show. This is a Friday going into the weekend. I know we have some doubters as we're talking about the Ipe situation and the Julio situation. But there is some news here that hopefully is something positive. As if you guys are loyal listeners to this show, you guys know that Chavez Ravine and the history of Chavez Ravine is very important to us. And they was just recently passed through. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I think
The Assembly Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, it just passed committee, so it's not actually it's just part of the process moving along. But I don't know how familiar you guys are. There is the Chavez Ravine Accountability Act, and what this act is it. Do you have it there, Amy? Do you know? Can you
Yeah,
explain to the people?
Yeah, it's AB 1950, and it's essentially providing historical accountability, reparative measures, and a memorial to honor those displaced from Palo Verde, Bishop, and La Loma. So it's basically correcting an injustice. It was created by Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo, and it's sponsored by Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara.
And you know what's interesting? Wendy Carrillo, this is her last term. So this is probably one of the last things that she'll be doing. Now, also as part of this act, there is going to be actual compensation, correct, for those people that owned city land in Chavez Ravine, and at least some sort of compensation for relatives, right?
Maybe I didn't get that far into diving into it. So potentially they did say reparative measures. So potentially some sort of reparations.
So, okay, we'll put a pin in that then. Don't hold me to that until we get actual confirmation. But I know that when I bring this up, there are sometimes people will say, well, you got to bring up old stuff, Juan. I mean, Chavez Ravine happened so long ago, like it's almost 70 years or more so. Like, why are we still talking about this? And look, again, it's easy for because at least I didn't live through this, right? But I feel like we're seeing it again with what's happening with the gondola. All right. They're building the gondola and it is affecting people's neighborhoods. Uh, I think that's important. I think that is something to bring attention to. So that's why for us on this show is a little different. Yes, we talk a lot of baseball and we want to focus on baseball things, but there are certain social aspects, especially those that affect the community, that both Amy and I would like to address.
And I just so that we can kind of save ourselves the research later, I have what the reparative measures would be. So it doesn't give any amounts, but it just says proposes various forms of compensation, including offering city-owned real estate comparable to the original Chavez Ravine landowners, or providing fair market value compensation adjusted for inflation. So it's creating pathways for displaced non-land owning residents to receive relocation assistance, healthcare access, employment support, educational opportunities, and other forms of compensation deemed appropriate by a newly established task force. So it looks like they're trending in the right direction to kind of make some reparations for the people who did lose their land, and just the what happened in those three communities.
And so we're going to go ahead and end the show. Hopefully, we will have a good weekend with the show pods. And once again, this is Friday. On Saturday, we are going to be at Rancho Cucamonga for the Chaquetas night. So if you guys are going to be out there, please go ahead and join us.
And we're still on Shohei Ohtani home run watch for Jose Ayala.
That's right.
He's going to lead the Dodgers in home runs by the end of this weekend.
That's right. So Jose Ayala, everybody light a candle for Jose Ayala, because if not next week, the receipts are coming, my friend.
But we all benefit if he's right. So
that is true. We do all benefit. Amy, any last words before we wrap up the show?
Let's win this series.
All right. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've been listening to us on the podcast, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Rate us, write us a review, help spread the word. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us comments. We love engaging with you. Follow us on social media, on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, Threads, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You've been listening, watching Baseball Shangri-La. Nos despedimos con un beso. Amy, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.